This interview with Tom Harbour, the National Director of Fire and Aviation Management for the U.S. Forest Service, was filmed December the 14th, 2015 in the agency's headquarters in Washington, D.C., across the street from the Washington Monument. Mr. Harbour was nearing the end of his 46-year career and was just 2 weeks before his scheduled retirement date. He had been Director of Fire and Aviation Management for 11 years, coordinating the efforts of 10,000 wildland firefighters. The first topic in the interview was about the Cantwell-Hastings Bill that was signed into law in 2002 as a knee-jerk reaction to the fatalities on the 30 Mile fire the year before. The bill required fatalities of U.S. Forest Service personnel on a fire to be investigated by the Department of Agriculture's Inspector General's office, an office that had no experience or training in the suppression or investigation of wildland fires. The goal of the IG investigation was to determine if any crimes were committed so that a firefighter could be charged and possibly sent to prison. The crew boss of those 4 firefighters had been charged initially with 11 felonies, including 4 counts of manslaughter after those 4 members of his crew were entrapped and killed. Those charges were later reduced to 2 misdemeanor counts of making false statements, to which the crew boss pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 3 years of probation and 90 days of work release. We asked Mr. Harbour about the Cantwell-Hastings Act and if he thought it had served the firefighters well or if there needed to be changes.
I'd like to see changes. It's Public Law 107-203. We learn those numerals all too frequently. I can understand why Mr. Hastings, and who's since retired, and Senator Cantwell obviously hasn't. She's the ranking member on the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. I can understand why in the aftermath of 30 Mile they called for and passed that piece of legislation. In my mind, the unintended consequence of that legislation and the unintended consequence of the issues surrounding L. Reese Daniels, and you can have a lot of debate and discussion about that, has led to a point where I really believe that we could do better. We could find a better way to learn. We could find a better way to begin to identify some of the root causes and fundamentals that afflict us still. So that's one of the things, Bill, that I think has outgrown its usefulness, and me personally, I'd like to see, in the spirit of improvement, in the spirit of learning, I'd like to see 107-203 changed, and in its place much better recognition of how firefighters learn and what we can do to be better.
Is there any topic or area in fire management that you think needs more research?
Oh yeah, I'm fascinated by a variety of things. Mostly, Bill, by how we make decisions, how you and I make decisions. I don't know as much a history about you as I should, but I can sure tell you, there were certainly a few times, there but for the grace of God go I type of thing. And, it's been the proverbial, I know God loves fools, because I'm sitting here today. And yet at the time when you make those decisions, when you go do those things, you think you're rational. In hindsight, when you step back, you think, how in the world could I have ignored that piece of information? And so I really would like to think that not only when you were talking about things we can do to improve the safety and quality of our initial attack firefighters, buried in this large umbrella where I think about risk management is this whole fundamental for me about how we communicate and what happens under stress. We know that the U.S. Armed Forces have done stress, and we know, you and I have experienced that the more the stress, the more focused we get. I think there's a significant science-based work out ahead of us in human psychology and social science. There are wonderful things that are happening right now. Dr. Mark Finney, is ready to take Rothermel spread models to the next level now that he's got some more basic understanding about how fire propagates. But I am really focused on this human factors, is what we've called it, and it's been this collage. But I'd really like to have us do more research on how good information goes from Bill to Kari to Tom and gets recognized as good information, and we take the right action. I really think that in addition to some of the fundamental science, there's social science and human behavioral science that we need to think about and investigate into the future.
So you've probably answered this question 100 times already, but what are your post-retirement plans? What are you going to do?
Yeah, that's why do you think I'm asking you about Wildfire Today? I mean, I tell people all I really know is I want to stay involved in public policy. I'm got no lobotomy planned immediately after retirement. I'm going to stick around the DC area. My wife's got about a year or so before we can move back west, and so I want to stay engaged in public policy. I suppose, Bill, I'm facing that same thing that you faced in '03 when you take the accumulated wisdom, all the stupid things you did and a couple of smart things you did, and you put that up there and you think, doggone, why don't we have the Vulcan mind meld? Why can't I grab a hold of Kari's head and just be able to tell her, now don't do all these stupid things, but do these good things. So I'm going to stay involved in public policy, probably try my hand at a little consulting, although I have no idea what that is or how that happens, but I see people like Greg Greenhoe and others that you and I know, Pat Kelly and Steve Pedigo. So I'll find out what that is and how I do that, but I'm going to miss the people and the pace and the issues, and it's going to be a heck of a challenge learning how to be a retired fire director, because it's been 14 years of 24/7, 365, and I still worry. I won't go off the clock until 0001 hours on the 3rd of January 2016, and right up until that time, I'm going to continue to worry and watch and fret. So I don't know. I'll have a lot more time to read your website.
One of your previous bosses, Mark Ray, who was 2 or 3 levels above your pay grade, after he retired, within 6 months he was filing lobbying reports saying he was working for Lockheed, trying to sell unquote, quote, firefighting equipment, unquote, to the government. Has Lockheed reached out to you?
No. In fact, who was it? He's a very good man. I can't think of his name right now, but I know he had been circulating this idea, you know, that I was going to go to work for Lockheed. No, I'm not going to go to work for Lockheed. I like the 130J, and I've told folks before, and I'll tell folks after, I like that 130J. You know, the correct answer is we've got an Office of Ethics over at USDA, and I'm in the kind of position where there's some things I can't do for a year, and some things I can't do for a couple of years, and some things that I could never do in a lifetime. And so I suppose like all of us, Bill, you know, making sure that whatever the rules are, and I know Mark Ray, and he's as smart a guy as I ever dealt with. You know, I'm sure he had the I's dotted and the T's crossed and the P's and Q's in the right place. And the good folks over at the Office of Ethics have, you know, told me anytime I have a question, I can go see them. So I hope to stay involved with some things, but there'll be a new director. Dan will be acting at 0001 hours on 03 January 2016. Dan will be the new acting director, and he'll do a great job. And you know, I'll see how this retirement stuff works out.
So in your career since 1970, what was the accomplishment that you're most proud of?
Yeah, you know, I've been asked that too, and I suppose there's a few off the top. About a month ago, I was able to give my final keynote as director to the apprentice program, and so 25 years of the apprentice program is something I'm really proud of. I'm proud that Bobby Garcia and Oscar Vargas and the folks on the Angeles have kept the Explorer program. Greg got that Explorer program going while I was there, and I'm proud that that's continued. I'm proud of the work we've done in caring for our people. I'm proud here. A couple of years ago, the state foresters honored me for working with them. I think the title of the award was something like, you know, crustiest old fire guy ever to have the state foresters appreciate them, and so I'm proud of that. But I'd fundamentally hope that the pride I have is in the people. Jerry Williams challenged me and had me come back here and learn how to be director, and along with a whole number of people that were mentors in my career, and I hope I've mentored a few folks also in my career.
Is there a previous national fire director that you admired or wanted to emulate?
Yeah, certainly Jerry Williams, the guy that was right before me. You know, again, one of the more brilliant people that I've ever been associated with, and I was able to see up close when I was his deputy all the kinds of turmoil and travail, and he set a tone of integrity and honesty and strategic thinking. I hope I've met his standard of integrity and honesty. He's certainly a much bigger thinker than I. I think back to Mick Amacarilla because in the records that I see, I'm the longest serving fire director in the Forest Service, and yet Mick Mick did this job for a long time too, and the longer I went, the more fascinated I was at what it takes to sustain energy and commitment in this job. You got a battery that's being drained 24/7, 365, and unless you're plugged in to the kind of thing that builds you back up, in my case that was great people and good issues that excited me, the drain is so significant. It takes a lot. And so whoever the next director is, that's one of the things I'm going to let him know. There's a lot of pull on the battery, and you got to be charged into a power source some way to keep that battery recharged. You know, like you, there's so many stories and so many people. What was it, a year or so ago, one of your old superintendents passed on. You were reminiscing about one of your old superintendents, and I think, gee, what a neat thing it is. You know, you don't realize that when you're an 18-year-old kid. What a neat thing it is to get connected into the lives of folks. I had a guy I worked for my second summer. First summer, you know, was just discovery. First 1970 was just discovery. Boy, I loved the work, but I wasn't sure. And my second year, I worked for a guy named John P. Andy Anderberg. And it was so cool. He retired in the early 80s. Technician off the Stanislaus. And it was so cool to stay in touch with him for decades. And I would read his notes back to me, because he knew me as a GS2, buck 88 an hour, I think I started at. And he'd see me rise through the organization, and he'd write me these letters back about, how proud he was. And I think, you're being melodramatic. Now that I'm an old guy, I think, geez, I get such a kick out of Denise Blankenship and Drag Sharp and Shauna Lagarza all being apprentices, and I was a part of starting that apprentice program. So now I appreciate you letting me run through memory lane here. Of course, the thing you're most concerned about and I'm most concerned about is the future. Our past was a wonderful thing, and you and I will probably find some time to sit and visit, but folks like Kari, have got years to go ahead of themselves, and it's really the future that we're trying to be mindful of. So.
After the interview was over, Mr. Harbour said that for the last 11 years, he's always had to be within cell phone coverage, unless he had one or two satellite phones nearby. So he's going to be looking forward to doing some traveling.